Shirley here with Sirius Dallas Moon, and this post I'm looking at the date for upcoming elections in Netherlands. So a couple of months ago, there was a dramatic move that collapsed the government in Netherlands, and I paid attention to the fact that the current Prime Minister, Dick Schoof, has karmic rope with the 1800 chart of Netherlands. I believe it is not the same sidereal constellation where they have the moon, um, which is both Kritika and Nakshatra, but I believe it's not the same constellation, although I could be wrong about that. At any case, there was a move by Geert Wilders, who is leader of PVV, which became quite, I think it was the biggest, relatively the biggest party in the previous elections, but there was not agreement about the prime minister, and this is how Dick Schoof became prime minister. First of all, why is it important to look at the elections in the Netherlands? There is something that's still coming to the forefront regarding whether there is a topic about the procedure of elections. I'm not going to elaborate on that too much because I do believe this would come to the forefront in the coming months. Or this could be one of the things that could be discussed in the coming months. Netherlands is both a democracy and has a royal family, and has the ICC in Netherlands. So very, very prominent country. Right now we have also current head of NATO, a previous Dutch prime minister. So Netherlands is on the news. It's been on the news since the eclipses of Aries, okay, the eclipses of with Ra in Aries. And now that the nodes are on the Pisces Virgo, it pinpoints very, very sensitive part in the Dutch chart. And very risky part, to be completely honest. But also, this is a country that is, while being a small country territorially, is having more and more grasp of influence upon global politics. Whether it's the fact that if there is a jurisdiction when it comes to war crimes, it is done in The Hague. If there is a meeting of a global military alliance of the West, and it's not just the West, now that Australia, I think, is also, yeah, and I do think that we're going to find out a lot about Africa, okay? And Japan is in NATO, and those meetings, the summits, are held in The Hague. At least the last one was, which was of very big historical importance, and this is not just symbolically. It is also in terms of the decision makers, visible and perhaps even less visible, coming from the upbringing or the neurosystem environment of Netherlands. So this is why this country is becoming even more important as per the date that was currently set for the elections. First things first, it is going to be after September eclipses. September eclipses pinpoint both charts of Mark Rutte and of Geert Wilders very, very significantly, and the 1800 chart of Netherlands. So the 1800 chart has almost a stellium with at the end of Pisces, with the lot of fortune in 22 degrees Virgo, and that is beyond the sensitive spot. I think that a lot of the things um, that are exposed in the world, perhaps even the things that they associate to Mossad or CIA, we might find the third player here, and I don't know in what way, but definitely that's something that people will begin to question. Okay, because where do you litigate Netherlands for something international? Okay, if the ICC is in The Hague, and this is a structural problem, it's not the Netherlands problems, it's just that Netherlands is feeling the X in the equation that is problematic. Okay, it is both the power that allows certain leaders to, like Wilders, to talk about a Nexit and a Gilden, and it is setting the spotlight on Netherlands in a way that can that let's just say they can deal with some of the things Israel dealt with, being the place of atomic equilibrium between the East and West. That and the Mossad. Okay? And so we hear the voices also within Netherlands of who is Mossad, who is not Mossad, who is being asqueashing to Trump, or maybe vice versa. And that is creating an atmosphere that whoever is going to take the prominent roles will have to take the fire. And we saw previous prime minister that even was known to be a Teflon mark for not having scandals and even tremendous scandals touch him. Okay, that it kind of slips away. And even in that case, he still was the one to catch the fire from decisions that an entire government made, um, and was litigated for, and is in the process of litigation for. But the name that we heard is the name of the prime minister. So who is going to be the next person to stand in that line of fire is a question. Let's take a look at the chart for October 29. I think they said October 25, and then in the news kind of like October 29, so I don't know if that's the final date. Rao and Ketu, still in the axis of Pisces and Virgo. We're going to have the September eclipses before that. Neptune and Saturn. Okay, Neptune and Saturn at the end of Pisces. Really surrounding that 22 lot of fortune opposition of Virgo in a very intense way. It's both a signification of elections, to be frank. Okay, Saturn conjoining Neptune is about dissolution of certain structure, and that can be absolutely governmental structure. Jupiter next to Procyon is something that I like here. People will really need to take a look at not only Dick Schoof but Mark Rutte. What has Mark Rutte been through around the dissolution of the government in 2023? Because this Jupiter is Jupiter returned for Mark Rutte, and because an election on this day pinpoint a person who would be going through pretty much the same things. And what do I mean by that? First of all, Procyon has to do with nuclear energy. It has to do with being favored, being favored by the monarchy, which is a trait that is necessary for a country that has a royal family, or that deals with Britain, which all countries do. It also has to do with denuclearification and world peace. JFK, Nelson Mandela had prominent points on this point, and it looks like whoever is going to be taking that position of prime minister will have to study through and through what has Rutte been through, because they're very likely be subjected to the same treatment for good and for bad. Okay. Everything that it's kind of like, everything that they've blamed the other person for. It's kind of like we blame our parents and then we have children. Okay. Now, for those of you who know a little bit about the scandals, yeah, I've so far no intentional jabs. It's true that the jabs were not intentional. Okay. First there is a jab, and there's like, oh, that was a jab. So another thing I see here is this Lilith Mars at the end of Scorpio, which is again pinpointing Rutte's Neptune, which, okay. So, but Lilith Mars at the end of Scorpio and Mercury in detriment opposing Uranus. So what it tells me, first of all, there's going to be some scandal about the votes. There's going to be some new scandal. It's going to have to do with religion. Moon is conjoining Pluto in Aquarius. It's going to be some sort of scandal. Either it's going to be very challenging to, but that is remediated by the Saturn Neptune, because there is a certain structure that's dissolving. It feels, you know what I feel like? Mark Rutte is going to be so involved in those things without being even present. And I don't know to tell you exactly why. I mean, there were so many scandals in 14 years. Anybody who would run a certain position for 14 years or 15 years would be involved with many scandals. But it tells me something here where it's a structure, it's a belief structure, the combination of religion and maybe the electoral procedure, but I don't understand why, that is supposed to remediate or pacify a very big conflict. Now, Mars-Uranus opposition, let me put it that way. Let me predict, okay? Let me predict, because when Mars was squaring Uranus, there was an issue about LGBTQ real estate and masonry that was coming to the forefront, and the brotherhoods. Mars trining Uranus is pretty much the same, but kind of less of a crisis way. Mars opposition Uranus is brotherhoods versus whatever Uranus is coming to liberate in Gemini, and we know the Gemini is kind of about labor rights, suffragist, who has the right to vote, and so. Ooh, there is the okay. Saturn rules homeless and refugees, and there's the question of who has the right to vote, and there is the question of deportation of citizens that very likely already have the right to vote. And this is where, I mean, Wilders is a master of structure, okay? Rutte is a master of charm and the money maneuvers, but when it comes to structure, this is where he had to Teflon things. This is where he, how should I say that? This is how the taxation stuff and the legislation stuff that are Saturnian is something that would would require Tefloning, okay? Whereas the Martian stuff is kind of like a stronger point. With Wilders, he's a master of maneuvers when it comes to structure. And yet, first of all, he was, I think, in the government. I think it wasn't in the opposition. No, by then I think it was COVID. I don't remember if he was opposition or not. But it tells me that there is going to be something here. Let me concentrate. Oh, because, okay, this is a right-wing leader that is of the list of right-wing leaders that are calling for deportation of people who emigrated to Netherlands as refugees and did not integrate when it comes to language and culture. I was being elegant, right? But when it comes to them having the right to vote, they have the right to vote. They're listed as citizens, and there's plenty of them. So there's even going to be perhaps an argument about the right to vote, but there's the conjoining of Lilith. Whoever is going to try and take the place of Dick Schoof right now is going to have to deal with the things that rooted Teflon, but they might not have a Teflon shield, okay? It's just so... And the eclipses in September are going to be of high importance because they're triggering Ruth's chart, they're triggering Geert Wilders' chart. And this day is particular, is Jupiter return almost on the degree for Mark Rutte. So I'm like, I think it's going to be a big I told you so from Mark Rutte. I don't know what would his position be around that time, but it's going to be a giant I told you so to whomever is going to be dealing in that elections, whether it's to count the votes, who has the right to vote, sexpionage, sexpionage, sexpionage. Okay, the role of sexpionage in elections. There might even be an extortion call, like something that is, because Mercury is pictures, but it's ruled by a Jupiter that is with Procyon. So it's kind of like to sweeten a Mark and Mark type of situation. Sun in Scorpio, releasing from a square to Pluto, Moon Pluto. There is a lovely bisextile that's still there, okay, and the Moon is involved, but it's with Pluto. It means that the people themselves are going through tremendous transformation. And that could be both the refugees that are in Netherlands and, how should I say, they were more focused on having their own rights, okay, their own housing, work. Don't talk about the children, don't talk about the children. I was like, okay, don't talk about the children, just go to work, live my life, I don't know, follow the rules, study the language or whatnot. And then they might be exposed to something that becomes relevant to them. They might even pull up another 1100. So the 1100 was something that happened at around COVID. Families and refugees and immigrants were very susceptible to that, but not only them. And they received money from the government. Then the government said people didn't fill out the form correctly, took the money. The people that were already in need began to have a crisis, and in the fiscal crisis, their children were taken away from them. Now, some of these people, to be very honest, some of the people would say, I have 20 children when they have 7 children. Now, 7 children is enough, but some of these people have had their children taken away from them. Okay, and so, the fire was on the Dutch government, but it was also particularly on Mark Rutte. I have no idea how it Teflon. I mean, he is the children. I know that, but other than that, it's kind of like that's the only explanation. and so and so I kind of feel that they're gonna try and pull the same scam again with new refugees. And whoever is going to be winning the elections, this would be something that no longer happened in Mark Rutte's time. The alternative is that this would be regarding something that did happen, and now they would have to deal with the implications, because they're going to go like, okay, where are the children? Where is the money? Where is the this? Where is the that? There is also the crisis in Palestine that is highly involved. Palestine is on the axis of Virgo and Pisces. I know that Geert Wilders is a big, is very invested in Israel. Let's just put it in a fiscal analogy. Um, so yeah, poetry on X. But let's just put it that way. And Dick Schoof actually, after Wilders done the deed of dropping the government because he did pull the maneuver, then Dick Schoof issued that Israel is a risk. They forbade, who was it? Ben Gvir and Smotrich are persona non grata in the red light district. That was the house. Okay, that's what we were joking about in our home. So so this is, so Dick Schoof pulled the move on Geert Wilders in return, and and now it's challenging because the entire trajectory of away with the people that don't actually study the language and don't make of Dutch values their own values, and it's kind of like they want to integrate in the country, but they don't actually integrate in the country. Then they want to be, then and genuinely, when you think about it, that's an issue. There is a certain character of the nation, but then the nation does other things that probably will be exposed. And then many other people come in. They have their own culture, and that's their place to live. So now they're going to go by their own values. And at the same time, there is the cynical part where people that had the money to get away from those countries were a part of the problems more than they were a part of the solution. And perhaps this is how they got their funding. So and that creates a very challenging trajectory to win the elections on the look how brute are the people that come to Netherlands that are not integrating with the values of being Dutch, where where Smotrich and Ben Gvir are also considered a risk to the Netherlands, which was very smart move by Schoof to like to. I live in Israel. I just like that was a maneuver. He wasn't left without replying. He didn't leave this message unread, so to speak. That's some noise that they make. Okay. Um, and so this makes it very challenging to do the takeover, particularly when it comes to standing with Israel while making that takeover and getting the electorate, while even Israelis are kind of looking at Ben Gvir and Smotrich thinking, well, I mean they're people, but it's like it might be a good argument. I mean, they cause troubles. They don't like LGBTQ. Um, and it's not like he made Bibi Netanyahu persona non grata, which is the current prime minister of Israel. It's kind of like it's like you can't really argue with that. It's not even like Macron. Macron just acknowledged Palestine, and Israel begins to snap at him for doing pretty much the obvious. Like everybody's gonna know that after such a move, countries will acknowledge Palestine. It's not something that Israel can do anything about it. So they're like, for those that have been fantasizing on I don't know, on being invested in child trafficking on the Gaza Strip, then they're gonna have to deal with the fact that the Palestinians would want the country, and the UN won't really have a reason to exist denying that, just as it wouldn't in 1948 when Israel was founded. So the situation here is very, very challenging. It takes more than Minder Marokkaner to take that election. And when it comes to the very fine moves, and I think the major candidate that we see by now is Geert Wilders. And when it comes to the very fine move of distincting himself from Davos quite consistently, quite bravely, calling for an exit, it's kind of like say what you say, the person takes a stand and stands for that. Then that's going to be a situation where, good morning, where are the children? Good morning, where are the changes to the rules that you can take a child because the parent has no money? A lot of people are gonna wait. Good morning, where is public housing? Is it because and it's just because Nederlanders are looking for that change. It's kind of like, hey, the people that weren't satisfied in the past 14 years want to see a different trajectory. And while Dick Schoof was pretty pretty amiable in the sense that he never really posed a big giant threat that is outspoken and that is out with this Rute and this and this that and so on and so forth. It was never as accentuated. It doesn't mean it didn't exist. It's just it was never that accentuated. So when Dick Schoof was elected, people like, it's kind of like, oh, there is this fair character who we can't really complain about. Okay, and it can be very unnerving because nobody could really complain about him. And I mean, of course, it's Dutch people. Dutch people always find something to complain, and that is very, very true to all citizens. But really, like, he wasn't giving people too many reasons to go against him. When it comes to a person that have a strong position and takes action on that position, okay, and drops the government on that position, then people are gonna go, okay, first of all, they're gonna want to see that done. What does it mean? Does it mean that people that had the right to vote in the Netherlands are going to be deported if they are not compliant with certain values? Now, what are the values? Okay? Because the values, the electorate is on the basis of we're not going to have child abuse anymore, and we're not going to have a mistreat of women. Okay? People would expect that to go back to the White March in 1996 and finish the job. Okay? And this is where the Mark and Mark are gonna sit pretty on a cafe and one saying, okay, Geertje, deal with that. Okay? Or whomever is going to be elected. Because the people of Netherlands, they don't have short-term memory. And the guy that was naming, Rute Pinocchio will have to stand in the face of that fire, and people are not just going to say, okay, then less Moroccans, and it's like, no, because the reason for that was child abuse. The reason for that was the treatment to women. That's why we didn't like them. Okay, back to 1996, reset. Where are the children? Where is the public housing? Or even on a liberal scale, where is the part where our jobs are actually jobs? Not double jobs, but jobs where one can have, or where is the possibility to buy an apartment? Like, people are going to be asking abundance of questions, all the while wanting to decrease from the NATO threats to recruit them to a war and reduce the expense, the spending on NATO. And that's not like, it's gonna take more than less Moroccans to face that. All the while, the international arena is kind of pushing to recognize Palestine. And so the Israeli electorate here is powerful, but is it powerful enough? And for another person who's going to be more on the lines of, I don't know, being a centralist and so on, then people are going to at least ask the question, hey, show us that you're doing something that's different to the prime minister we deselected in 2023. Show us that you tend to the same challenges with the children, with the rules, with the housing, with the refugees, in a way that actually provides for Dutch people. And they're already by now going to have that from the very families, from the Moroccans and from the Ukraine people. People in Ukraine complain about the setting that they had for a living as well. A lot of people would want to get citizenship. A lot of people would want to fully integrate. A lot of people that have the right to vote would want to be represented. And that means that their children are not taken by the welfare if they don't have money or do have money and so on. So for anybody that would be elected, and the scandal that's very particularly pointed here has to do with children, has to do with news, has to do with the same things that Rutte was trying to perhaps remediate or sweeten, but without the Teflon. Okay, it's kind of like it's going through the same crisis without having the ability to just let it slide, without the necessarily personal charm. They're gonna have to be both favored by Trump, but also not too hated by Islam. They are going to have to justify spending 5% on NATO, or have a conversation with Mark Rutte on the topic. They're going to have to stand with the fact that they're always seen as the Mossad no matter what. That's currently the thing. I mean, people don't want to litigate MK Ultra, so they talk about the Mossad, because even if the Mossad is a branch of MK Ultra, it's a branch of. It's not the motherland of 7076. And if they want to say Rothschild, then they should say Rothschild. more things to do with that. The people are going to be affected by that in a very transformative way. The people by October 29, the people would have been transformed. And that has to do with the bisextile, which is type of the what they call the unholy alliance between the Vatican, the CIA, the banking system, and NATO. So the people are already transformed by October 29. Again, what will the eclipses in September bring? I don't know. It definitely will have to do with Palestine. Israel is less pinpointed here, but yes, Palestine, yes, the refugees, definitely the 1100 and the Gaza crisis and whatever, even gas, there was some gas or energy crisis, all the things that rooted Teflon, okay, basically, but the people would be already transformed. So, and what will the eclipses bring is a big question. The eclipses pinpoint, um, yeah, something to do with Lilith, which is again sexual sovereignty, but of children, of okay, did the children did the 1100 end up in St. Peter ring? Okay, people will be asking those questions. People will already feel the weight of, perhaps there even be an increase of taxation following the increase of 5% to NATO. Okay, they're not yet at the 5%. It's going to take a couple of years, but people might already be feeling that in their pockets. There can be another child scandal with the welfare, because it's kind of like, hey, those children were never returned to their parents. With all the litigations, they will very likely try to pull another one. Now, this is where I want to emphasize. Let's take a look at the September eclipses. September eclipses. I was looking at October, right? October 29. Yes. So September eclipses. We have the lunar eclipse, 15 degrees Pisces. That's exactly around the Lilith of, it's around the Chiron. It's a Chiron eclipse for I don't know all the names of the candidates, but it's a Chiron eclipse for the people that are born in the early 60s, and the Lilith eclipse for the people that are born, I don't know if for all the people, no, for Lilith eclipse it is for Rute, and I think that this one will pinpoint the scandals that he got away with. Rao 18 degrees, yes. And the COVID military operation. What else did I see there? This one is almost Mars return for Wilders and then Rute. And 29 Chiron. Okay, so this is the lunar eclipse. It's usually more felt by the people, but it's more like, hey, the people are going to be transformed, and that is pushing a painful part for the candidates. And then we have the solar eclipse in Virgo, and that was the one I got the omen for. Okay. Yeah, that's what I wanted to see. Beautiful kite shape, very transformative. Sun, Moon in Virgo. Ketu, Rahu, middle decan of Pisces. It's a Chiron eclipse. Okay. Jupiter with the Rahu, the early 60s that have, particularly those around 60, I think 1 to 3 or 2 to 4, that has the nodal eclipses on the Capricorn and Cancer will feel this one a lot. And yes, this Mars that I see square in Pluto. It's a fiscal challenge. It's also a housing challenge, a real estate challenge. Oh, I have mail. Um, it's all in all a beautiful sky, but the leadership is with Ketu. It doesn't pinpoint the 22nd degree, which is calming to me. The Mars square Pluto, however, it's going to be money issues. It's money, military juristics. Again, for Wilders, Dix Hofpool to move here. Okay, it's going to be very challenging to take the elections by the electorate, the Israeli electorate, and all. It's kind of like all the things that Wilders said, for better and for worse, are going to be returning. Look at this Mercury return. Mercury ruling over this Virgo stellium that Wilders has, and it's next to Zendaya. So, but it's also Saturn returned for Mark Rutte. It kind of feels like everybody gets to say I told you so and get to be told I told you so as well. It does pinpoint me, but I'm not associated with that. So, I'm just the astrologer. So yeah, and this is a Mars return. Mars sextiles Venus. Falcon, there is going to be some scandal, transformative. My prediction is that Wilders is going to say another thing that lasts him for some decades. Maybe already has, I don't know. And Rutte will have to deal with whomever is going to be the prime minister of Netherlands, because everybody's going to expect him to take them out of war, and maybe to take Netherlands out of NATO, which I don't really predict would happen. But even when it comes to, along the line of Nexit and Gilden is also that. But that, the opportunity is to litigate against MK Ultra. But and again, this is an opportunity that I see, which means probably hardly anybody sees. But it's given me some really extreme fiscal union, so fiscal alliance. And with this Jupiter that on the election day is close to Procyon, somebody's going to try to play a role of taking Netherlands out, maybe even of NATO, so not to enter a war. But both they are going to be dealing with the crisis of funding for that. And Rutte is going to be dealing with, from NATO, with the, and this is a Saturn return, so this has to do with structure. Okay, and it will have to do, if you think about the dissolution of the USSR, so he will have, it's kind of like Russia dealing with the country that breaks into sovereignty. So when it was, Nexit, then that's one question. But when it's giving, okay, we don't want to be a part of this organization that wants to send us to war on a supposed Article 5 type of thingy, then that can lead into a full-blown code orange, okay? And I don't mean the weather, although it can be the weather, it begin in the weather as well. Then you send some Israelis to help with the natural disasters, and and everybody Mossad. So, but who trained them? The CIA. And but that definitely is not a good, it's not an easy thing. It's like, even if somebody is going to play the, and you know what, it's actually putting points in favor of Wilders, because if there's a guy to do such a move, that's absolutely Wilders. And he's probably going to say something along the path that's going to put him into an ICC type of situation. um, and from NATO's point of view, it's going to be dealing with the country, quite a prominent country, that is going to do a lot of problems. And this is Saturn return for NATO leader, for NATO Secretary General, who is Dutch. So it's going to be, this solar eclipse is going to be transformative, because of Uranus' presence. Is going to be unexpected, fated, unexpected. And the Mercury next to Zendaya is still, like, we're still stuck at people pleasing, albeit all of that. And then we go back to the 9th October. Then there is this opposition with both Mars and Uranus, but also Mars, Lilith, Mars and Uranus, and Mercury and Uranus, with Jupiter Procyon. So Netherlands is no less interesting than it was after 7th October. But this particularly is an eclipse that points out the military alliance and the ICC. Military alliance, ICC, that Venus is both kind of touching at the ascendant for Rute and the Sun Uranus for Wilders, Sun Pluto Uranus, and Venus as well. It's a Venus return. Wow. Mercury return, Venus return, and also quite Mars return. Will there be other prominent candidates? Any one of them will have to deal with. Are they going to present an alternative to the 5% NATO compliance? Because Dixhoff really went along, kind of like completely being in a rapport, body, heart, mind, and soul with, we're going to where Ruta is going with the 5% and so on. At least on the visible level, it was not something that was met with any, resistance. Okay, again, it was a very, and the people with this eclipse, they would want something different. Everybody's looking for the person who will save the day, tell them they don't have to go to war, they don't have to spend that much money on war, and they don't get their children taken away from them if they couldn't pay, or if they had to pay back the money that the government gave them. And everybody at the same time want to have housing, preferably public housing that is safe housing, and or the ability to buy a house, and to get away with not only the Moroccans, but also all these other refugees, which is kind of like, it's very embarrassing, it is war, and so on. So they go by the, why are we funding Zelensky? And this kind of gives leverage to people like Thierry Boudet, who talked about, why are we funding Zelensky? Now that there was a scandal with there was a scandal around, is Zelensky is Zelensky not holding some of the money that he's receiving from actually going to where it needs to go. Whether it's true or not, it definitely serves voices like Thierry Boudet, that that talked about, hey, why are we funding that crisis? And we all know that behind that is the very PC way of, hey, can we get the Ukrainians out with the Moroccans? It's like, we don't want to say that, but we definitely want to help them in Dnipropetrovsk and Odessa more than, at the borders of Rotterdam or something like that. And indeed, Netherlands is a small country and very fiscally tight. Okay, people, even the high society there rides a BMW that stands in the parking lot of a two-story building in North Amsterdam that is definitely looking like like a normal neighborhood. Okay, they look normal, they act normal, they look normal, their houses look normal. It's just the BMW parking outside, and to be very honest, the rest of them is Teslas, so it's not like it looks that exceptional. And but it isn't that the income gap is not too big. There is an income gap, and there is a lot of, the sensitive politics of having to look the same as others. All the while, the country is territorially not very big. The soil itself is constantly needing readjustment. There are actually parking lots that have machines that dig in the soil all the time to keep the soil from sliding and to keep the building actually standing. So there's a lot of things that already make Netherlands very difficult to live in. Okay, in just the geographic challenges, and the risk of flooding, that people that don't know Netherlands, they have a 3-story buildings because they need that. Okay, they need the stuff to be at the second or the third story because floods is not something unusual. So for the people that come as refugees, it's going to be quite challenging because they probably won't get the ability to float above the water in a very literal sense. So what I and here is something that I have been tending to in COVID, and that was a structural question. I went to Model UN and we learned about the structure of the UN, the Security Council, and this and that. And there was this question that is, if the ICC is in Netherlands, where do you sue Netherlands for war crimes? And if COVID was a military project, then Netherlands partook with the rest of the nations in war crimes, and it means that it is in the litigation that cannot be in The Hague. Now, I don't know where is this thing going to come to, but we understand that when Saturn Neptune is meeting, those mythical structures, global structures, are dissolving. Whoever is going to be the next Dutch Prime Minister, if all things go well for 4 years, is going to be the Prime Minister that will need to tend to that. Now, whenever such a thing occurs, if a Prime Minister is litigated, any small scandal can be a big scandal. going back to October, if it is going to be in 29th October. Now, is that a good election date? Yes, it is speaking with the eclipse spirit. It is speaking to the Netherlands chart. What is this black moon, Lilith, and Mars conjoining? And they are going to sextile Pluto. So this is Mars sextiling Pluto, applying to sextile, okay? Still applying to sextile Pluto. So the bisextile is very strong. People are very transformed. What we don't have is the last decan of Taurus. What we do have is the last decan of Pisces. So I really hope it's not any pivotal point with this 22 degrees lot of fortune from the 1800 chart. And if it is, it's also a question, okay? Because that is definitely, yes, it's definitely going to be a topic that will be something that could be a part of the discussion. I don't know if the elections themselves, but definitely there is this there is this threat in the air regarding what can a prime minister do while and stay alive. It's kind of like it's way easier to Teflon a child scandal, which may even be a child trafficking by the government scandal. That's a global issue. It's happening in Norwegian and in Sweden as much as it's in Israel and in Palestine. They have a trade entity. We trade with the Israeli-Palestinian Chamber of Commerce is trading with some sort of entity called Palestine. So it's easier to get away with that than to get away with actually preventing war or further escalating war. Pluto in the 8th house of Netherlands 1800 chart is at 20 years where everything that Netherlands swiped under the rug is going to be addressed, and the ICC with that structure is the main focal point here. Is the place that Netherlands has in the global structure. How did the ICC even become the card of neutrality? If Netherlands is a part of NATO and there is a war, the card of neutrality of The Hague is not really there. And the ICC cannot be in The Hague in that case. What role was Netherlands playing in the Israeli-Palestinian trajectory? The Ukraine is more Scorpio Taurus, but it can be a question about Ukraine as well and the war. Here is just all these topics with this Aquarian 8th house that beg the question, what is Netherlands passively invested in, and how come everybody has to go to Netherlands where Netherlands is no longer